सर्वेभ्योऽपि वीक्षकेभ्यः नमस्काराः। यथा पूर्वं मुण्डक उपनिषदः द्वितीये खण्डे अ, पञ्चमस्य मन्त्रस्य चर्चानन्तरं अनुवर्तयामः। अत्र उक्तं यत् एषः आत्मा, अयम् आत्मा न वा प्रवचनेन न वा कर्मणा तपसा प्रवचनेन मेधया श्रुतेन श्रवणेन आहोस्वित् अन्यैः उपायैः न लभ्यः, किन्तु आत्मा सदैव ये बलवन्तः, ये च लिङ्गतपसः आचरणवन्तः, अपि च ये उत्सुकाः सन्ति, तेषां समूहे कस्यचित् कृते आत्मा स्वां तनुं विवृणोति इति एतावता दृष्टम्। Out of a group of people who have the necessary conditions such as bala, utsaha, and tapas, the right kind of tapas, the sattvika tapas, out of a pool of those people who are doing yatana, who are putting in the efforts through medha, who are putting it through karma perhaps, who are putting it through bhakti and so on and so forth, so many variety of ways, pravachan and so on, who are still striving and who have these qualities within them. Out of a bunch of these people, a couple of them may perhaps be chosen by the will of the Atma itself to reveal itself to such a creature or a being. This is what we have seen so far. And the Rishayah, the Yoginaha, Yoginyah cha, ये ज्ञानतृप्ताः कृतात्मानः वीतरागाः प्रशान्ताः सर्वगम अक्षरम एव सर्वतः प्राप्य, they find and they obtain the brahmatva, they find the all encompassing entity to be everywhere, sarvatah prapya, and in all manners they are united with, they have united their atma to such a thing, they have anchored their atma, they have yoked it to such a elevated position, such an esoteric, elevated, yet all evident position of being in the Brahmatva, the vastness, that they ultimately achieve avishanti, they achieve the state of allness, meaning they are no longer limited to a small identity of their personality. If we were to visualize this with an example, this is a very famous example given by Paramahamsa Ramakrishna, that there is a doll made of salt, absolutely just salt, and it is immersed into the ocean. So now the question is, after a while, the doll dissolves away. Then the question is, where is the salt which was there in the doll? Where is the salt which is there in the doll? It would have dispersed and diffused into the surroundings completely, totally. And in fact, the entire ocean is the very salt itself with water. So even the original salt doll was made perhaps from the same salt which came from the ocean. So now, when the salt dissolved into the ocean from the doll, when it got diffused away and dissolved, the question of where exactly is this salt is no longer valid, because those particles of salt have now diffused all throughout the ocean. This is just an example. So similarly, when the jiva or the yogi who have immersed their mind absolutely into the Brahman, in the presence of that vastness, all structures which were holding this mind into a limitedness are now broken. Therefore, the boundaries of that salt doll are no longer visible. They have now been blurred. Similarly, the boundaries of the personality have now gone. It is now completely immersed into the void. In which case, they find everywhere the everythingness everywhere, meaning every particle of the salt of the doll is now surrounded by all particles of salt in the ocean. Is it not? So, in such a manner, they find Yuktatmanaha. They have yoked the salt doll and immersed it into the ocean. Yuktatmanaha sarvataha sarvagam prapya. They find water to be everywhere. They find salt to be everywhere. Sarvagam prapya sarvam eva avishanti. So in this manner, they have entered, avishanti meaning they have entered or immersed themselves into the state of allness. We have seen this so far. Of course, all of this sounds, I mean, even to me, it sounds very abstract, very hard to follow. Of course, the example may be useful for mere comprehensive and conceptual understanding, but really what it means in actuality, I am myself still unsure. Perhaps some of you who have had this experience can comment. वेदांत विज्ञान सुनिश्चितार्थ संन्यास योगाद्यतयः शुद्ध सत्वाः ते ब्रह्मलोकेषु परान्तकाले परामृताः परिमुच्यन्ति सर्वे वेदांत विज्ञान सुनिश्चितार्थाः संन्यास योगाद्यतयः शुद्ध सत्वाः ते ब्रह्मलोकेषु परान्तकाले परामृताः परिमुच्यन्ति सर्वे वेदांत विज्ञान सुनिश्चितार्थाः संन्यास योगात् यतयः शुद्ध सत्वाः ते ब्रह्मलोकेषु परान्तकाले परामृताः ते परिमुच्यन्ति सर्वे Vedanta Vijnana Sunischitarthaha, those who have ascertained, who have no more doubts, they have firm conviction about the experience of what the Vedanta is talking about. Whatever the essence of Vedanta is, whatever the essence of the summary, the gist of all scriptures, of all the Apara Vidya is, they who have realized Vijnana, they have realized the gist of all the Vijnana, the gist of all the Vedanta in them, and now they have a firm conviction of this. Then what they do? Sannyasa yogat yatayaha shuddha sattvaha. They take up the yoga, they join through sannyasa, they attach through detachment. So sannyasa means to detach, yoga is to attach. Sannyasa yogat, attachment through detachment. Yatayaha Shuddha Sattvaha. These Yatayaha, these Munis, these Yoginis, who have purified their own inner being. By purify, we mean take it away of all which is wasteful. When do we say something is dirty or impure? When it has been alloyed with something which is unnecessary in it. So when you completely remove all of that away, the ore has been purified when the gang in it has been removed from the actual substance, which is the mineral, right? So in such a manner, when the mind has been purified, when the inner being, both the senses as well as the mind, has been purified of what? Of all which is wasteful, of all the tendencies which are wasteful, which are sapping its energy. Yatayaha, who have joined through the sannyasa yogat. Now there are two schools of thought. One is they take the literal meaning of sannyasa yoga to mean to actually take up sannyasa, to actually forsake the world, to actually renounce the world and be completely immersed in that one thing alone. That is, they choose a lifestyle where there is no more hindrance, no more dependencies. They choose a lifestyle where there is no more a need to function in the world or according to the social norms. They choose absolute freedom, or whatever freedom society and the world, physical world, can bestow upon them. So picking that lifestyle, they go deep into whatever conviction they have come to using the Apara Vidya, and they have cleaned themselves. They are very mentally hygienic and physically too. Te Brahmalokeshu Parantakale Paramritat. Now there is a Pata Bheda. Some people say Paramritat, and others here they put the Visarga here. Paramritat Parimuchyanti Sarve. Those people at the death of their body, at the final death of their lifetime, Para Antakale, or it could also mean at the end of the Pralaya, which is the end of a certain Kalpa, Brahmalokeshu, they who have reached the state of Brahmaloka by the earlier mentioned methods, which we have seen at the beginning of the first Mundaka, they will finally become para amritaha. They will become amrita and parimuchyanti. They will go beyond even the loka, the bondage of Brahmaloka, to finally be absolutely liberated. Sarve, all of them. Sarve. This is the literal meaning. The second meaning, which I would prefer, is a more figurative meaning where they learn to attach through detachment, and they have no ill intentions, ill bearings towards anybody. So they are Shuddha Sattva. They will do what is necessary. I mean, they will not tolerate, they will not be a doormat, they will not tolerate things thrown at them. But whatever is necessary for the sustenance of oneself and of the other person or of the other creature and the surroundings, they will do so. And here, Antakala, I would mean whatever the final thoughts are. So, Kala, I would interpret to be thoughts. You know, J. Krishnamurti often used to make this, draw this parallel between thought and time. He said, and I'm perhaps paraphrasing, I'm not really quoting him verbatim, thought generates time and time sustains thought. Something to that effect. So, in the final thought, the last thought of in their mind, which exists independently, when that also dissolves, they as in that body, that system undergoes a tremendous transformation where the Amrita, the final Amrita is now available to them, and the system becomes unshackled. There are certain shackles, there are certain chains which are binding this system to the world. It's tethering it to so-called reality of the world, the mundanity of the world. And all those shackles are now completely broken. And that system is allowed to raise like a helium balloon into the atmosphere, completely unshackled, unfettered. Let's see what Shankaracharya has to say. So, having all doubts resolved and having without doubt determined the object of knowledge, which is the Brahman, their minds are purified by the dint of renunciation of all karma and now being centered upon in the pure Brahman alone, attain the words of the Brahman at the end of samsara, for which the seekers after emancipation corresponds to the time of death of those rotating in samsara. As men who seek emancipation are many, the world of Brahman, though one, appears to be many, as is reached by many. So the plural number words of Brahman, Brahma Lokeshu, being the word reached, the expression in the words of Brahman, meaning in the Brahman, Paramritaha, they whose Atma has reached the highest immortal, which is the Brahman, they become the highest and the immortal even during life and are absorbed in all sides like a lamp that has gone out, and like the Akasha in the pot, they have no need of any other place to go to. And the motion is limited by place is only in samsara because it is accomplished by means limited. But as the Brahman is all, it cannot be reached in a limited space. If the Brahman were limited in the respect of place, it would be like a substance having form, having a beginning and an end, be dependent on one another, composed of parts or eternal. But the Brahman cannot be like that. So its attainment too cannot be limited by conditions of place. So all in all, it just goes on to say that the usage of the plural form Brahma Lokeshu is just a relative thing. We people look at these yoginis and yogis to have achieved something extraordinary. So because we can count many people, we think, oh, what they have achieved is also something very different, and hence a sum total of all of that will be a plural thing in number. But it cannot be so, because if we were to say there are so many, it destroys the ultimate idea, the entire axiom of there being unity. So what we think is plural is actually the one and the same. And what we think as this person has attained the state of enlightenment, this person on this day achieved Mahasamadhi, this person at this time under this Bodhi Vriksha achieved some wisdom, etc., is all a transactory means of description. All these descriptions are coming from people who are in samsara. So for people who are actually perhaps experiencing it, that description is entirely very different. They are paramritaha, they are supremely immortal. So there is no question of if at this point on this day they achieved samadhi, on this point on this day they achieved this or not, because who actually is achieving it? This is a deep question. Who actually is getting liberated? Who actually is getting enlightened? These are very pertinent questions. Is it the mind? Is it the body? Or is it the ego, which is a part of the mind? Or is it are the forces of the body, the um, physiological forces called the pranas, which are getting liberated? What exactly is getting liberated? That's a very deep question. Hence, we, for sake of transaction, just say, perhaps this person has achieved samadhi, this person has gone into nirvikalpa samadhi, the savikalpa samadhi, and so on. So all this mumbo jumbo, these jargons are thrown around very casually without actually understanding the true implication of Advaita. Advaita can, in the framework of Advaita, though for limited sake we can say this person attained this state, etc., it is still admitting duality. While in reality, according to Advaitic framework, there never was ever a person who was not enlightened. There never was a person, in fact. So that is the state of being in true vijnana, in being in true understanding and realization. That is the para antakala, and that is the para amrita, and that is the parimoksha. That is the final state of moksha itself, where everything becomes everywhere, and there is no distinction of unenlightened and enlightened, and so on and so forth. गताः कलाः पञ्चदश प्रतिष्ठा देवाश्च सर्वे प्रतिदेवतासु कर्माणि विज्ञानमयश्च आत्मा परे व्यये सर्व एकी भवन्ति गताः कलाः पञ्चदश प्रतिष्ठा देवाश्च सर्वे प्रतिदेवतासु कर्माणि विज्ञानमयश्च आत्मा परे व्यये सर्व एकी bhavanti. One of the most fascinating verses, very esoteric and powerful, something describing a process is seen here, that at the time of realization, if we can think so, what happens on the objective side? Meaning, what can onlookers of this person who is supposedly, let's still consider that there is something called as enlightenment and we are operating in duality, that this person has had this Atma Sakshatkara or Brahma. He has become Leena in Brahma. This yogini has renounced the body and become one with the Brahman. What does it actually mean? So, Gatah Kalah Panchadasha Pratishthaha. Pratishtham Swe Swe Swam Swam Pratishtham Panchadasha Kalaha Gataha. The 15 parts go back to their original sources or their foundations. Devaha Sarve Pratidevatasu. all the powers or all the forces of nature which were ruling the body or even otherwise which were controlling the world of the objective world of this, sorry, the subjective world of the experiencer. So think of this as the seer, and this larger sphere is the world which is being ruled by the devas, those respective devatas. And then the onlooker has a certain parts which is using, which is used by the seer. So we'll just draw this as, so now the black thing is the system, which is the body, the mind, and so on, which has the soul, let's say. Let's just talk in terms of duality and plurality. We still say there is the soul and there is all of this. Now there is the outer world, right, which the soul is interacting with through the help of these 15 instruments, these 15 faculties. Now, the world is run by certain forces which are called as the devas. Gatah kalah panchadasha pratishthaha. All these 15 instruments are wrapped up. They are put back in the toolbox, in the toolkit. All the devatas who were running the subjective world, they have gone back to their state of pratidevatasu. They have gone back to the state from where they came about, from where the subjective world manifested, and from where these devatas sprung, which is actually back into the seeds of the Atma itself. And the toolkit also, which sprung from originally the Atma, the essence of Prakriti, all the devatas which all came from Prakriti alone, they all go back, gataha, they all go back and they get subjectively immersed. Karmani vijnanamayaha cha atma. This atma, which is the vijnanamaya, which is now experiencing this supreme realization, vijnanamayaha, this supreme state, vijnanamayaha atma, which is and all the other karmas. So now the Atma, which was seated through the instruments, was trying to interact with the world. Because all the world and the faculties have wrapped up, they have folded unto themselves and gone into the state of a seed, of a primordial seed, there is no more any action. So all the actions also have ceased to be. And Atma, the inner self, the seer, Pare avyaye sarve eki bhavanti. All the devas, kalas, and the karma, along with the Atma, are now becoming one. Eki bhavanti. They are now, see, it is in the present continuous tense. Or you can just say present tense. Eki bhavanti. They are all becoming one. It's like a black hole. It is absorbing everything, and now it has become a singular substance. It's not even a substance, it's just a singularity. We don't really know what happens there. So everything, the devatas, the instruments, and the Atma, along with the karma, have been absorbed into that state of para, into that state of supremeness, which is the avyaya, which is the undecaying singularity, the undecaying, the unchanging singularity. Everything is becoming eki bhavanti. Everything is becoming one. Meaning everything is getting absorbed back into the state of oneness. This is what the process of experience of samadhi would look like. Moreover, the knowers of Brahman regard emancipation as consisting only in the release from bondage of samsara, and the rest not as something produced. Besides, at the time of emancipation, the kalas which produce the body, the pranas, etc., go back to their own seed, the cause. 15 in number because the 5 inner faculties and the 10 outer faculties, totally 15. The devas here refer to the powers adhering to the body and lodged in the senses such as the eye, etc., which are helping it, which are correlated to the outside world. So there is, according to Shankaracharya and other Vaisheshika Nyaya schools, there is the same Devata which is there within at the site of connection with the instrument as well as in the outside world. So that connection, for example, they say Surya is the Devata which is ruling the eye and the vision and objects outside. So the same Surya is seated within the eye, which is the instrument the Atma is using to look, and the all the other visions, which is the laptop, the form of this house, these books, the body, etc. All of that which the eye is able to see is connected to the eye itself by these threads, which are called as the devatas, and that those threads, those connections in some weird devata space, in some dimension, is the Surya. So all of that is getting wrapped up. So these connections between the visions and the eye is getting shorter and shorter. These threads are getting shorter and shorter, and they are getting folded. So the threads are drawing the objects from the world, merging it with the eye, and pulling it back into the state of the cause, which is the Prakriti. All those actions also which were after emancipation, which had begun to bear fruit, etc., can also be consumed. And the Atma, which is limited by the intellect, that is, here intellect means the identity, which is taking on the form of the Atma and which is actually the one which is striving for realization. That those set of thoughts which are now connecting with the Atma, that is called the Buddhi, which is the Lord of the Vijnanamaya Kosha, now has entered into the images of the sun, into the water, etc. After removal of all these conditions which are imposed, because the Buddhi did all of this through Neti and such, they have now mingled as one into the Brahman. This is the final purport, that they have all mingled into one thing. Like the sword which dissolved into the one ocean, all of these lost their individualness and became completely diffused into that supremeness, the vastness, the Brahman, the highest, whatever we want to call it, the indestructible, the avyaya, the para, everything. Just as he says, when you break a pot which was in connect with the room, there is an outside room, there is a pot. Both of them share the same space. But when you break the pot, a poetic description is that the space inside is somehow exuding and merging with the outer space. But if you actually look at it carefully, there was never ever such a need for merging. Let's say the pot is infinitesimally thin, right? There is actually almost, it has pores in it, let's say. So the akasha, the space outside and the space inside were always in connection. And moreover, you can never say the space inside ever merges back. But still, for the sake of our description, our human description, we tend to say or think that yes, this is how this merger is happening. That upon reducing this walls of the pot infinitesimally small by pricking more holes into it, the space supposedly became one with the outer space, right? Or you can think of a room filled with water, and there is a bag of water, and that bag also has pores and fibers in it. So if you actually look at it, let's say you have a bag or a cloth which has water in it, you submerge it into a bucket of water. Is this water different from this water? You can't really say so. And let's say I pull out the cloth from underneath. Now, can I say this water which was inside the cloth has now submerged into this water? It always was. It was always the same water. It was always in an exchange. These particles of water were always in exchange. But still, for our sake of human understanding, we say, yeah, the inner water has now merged with the outer water. This is what Shankaracharya, this is my understanding of his commentary. यथा नद्यस्यन्दमाना समुद्रे अस्तं गच्छन्ति नाम रूपे विहाय तथा विद्वान् नाम रूपाद् विमुक्तः परात् परं पुरुषमुपैति दिव्यम् यथा नद्यस्यन्दमानाः समुद्रे अस्तं गच्छन्ति नाम रूपे विहाय तथा विद्वान् नाम रूपाद् विमुक्तः परात् परं पुरुषम् उपैति दिव्यम्. Just as how Nadyah, the rivers who are flowing, Samudre Astam Gachanti, there are so many rivers flowing from different places, and when they all reach the ocean, when they all reach the basin of the ocean in the delta, Astam Gachanti, they all fall into the ocean. Nama Rupe Vihaya. Once you have fallen into the ocean, no more can you say if this water or these water particles came from Ganga or Yamuna or Kaveri or Narmada, etc. In the Bay of Bengal, where all these eastern flowing rivers uh, discharge into, where can you really say that these particles of water have come from? They're all so well mixed. And forget about well mixing. You can't even trace it back to one particular river. And in that sense, all the rivers, what are rivers but the water, right? The rivers are essentially the water. There is nothing else in a river than the water. So these waters, supposedly when we say of the rivers, this is again a trick played by language. When you say waters of the river, we mean to say there is something called a river like a container, and then there is the water in it. But actually, if it is drained of water, you can't even say there is a river anymore there. Is it not? You can only say there is sand or something which used to be a river. So this Shashti Vibhakti is actually an artifact, a misnomer, or a trick played by human intellect and language, because we can't express it any otherwise. Similarly, the waters of the river, they lose their nama and rupa, meaning they lose their name, identity, form, and traceability. Meaning they lose their limitedness. As long as they were in the river, you could say, yeah, this is the Ganga water. This is the Kaveri water. This is a very pristine Narmada water, etc. But you can't actually say any longer that this river is any more present in the Bay of Bengal. Similarly, Tatha Vidwan Nama Rupad Vimuktaha. So the intellect, or so the whatever faculties has this knowledge, this wisdom, this vidya, that will lose its nama rupa vimuktaha, will lose its nama and rupa, will lose its identity, form and identity, and become one with the parat param purusham upaiti divyam. It will become one with that supreme divya, the divine shining oneness, the purusha, which is the supreme of supreme, the ultimate, the best, the bestest, or the most excellent. It will become merged with that ocean of oneness. This is a powerful metaphor given here. Sorry, a simile, not a metaphor, it's a simile. And then, Sayoha vai tat paramam brahma veda brahmaiva bhavati nasya brahma vitkule bhavati tarati shokan tarati papmanam guha grantibhyo vimukto mrito bhavati Sayoha vai tat paramam brahma veda brahmaiva bhavati nasya brahma vitkule bhavati तरति शोकं तरति पाप्मानं गुहाग्रन्थिभ्यो विमुक्तो मृतो भवति। स यो ह वै तत्परमं ब्रह्मवेद ब्रह्मैव भवति न अस्य अब्रह्मवित् कुले भवति। तरति शोकं तरति पाप्मानं गुहाग्रन्थिभ्यो विमुक्तः अमृतः भवति। स यः हवै, he or she or it which realizes this way, that paramam brahma Veda realizes and experiences this supreme vastness, Brahmaiva Bhavati, they become that very Brahman, they become that very vastness, that doll which submerged into the ocean became the very ocean itself. Because what is the doll but the ocean now? Because what the doll was verily the parts of the salt which made up the doll. Is it not? Now, there is no longer even a doll. So you can't even say the doll became the ocean, because as soon as it was submerged into the ocean, those constituent particles of the doll, which were nothing but the salt and the water, went back into their original state, their original place, which was the ocean. Forget even that. Let's take an even powerful example. There is a bucket of water. You start cooling it, right? And from the very water itself, ice crystals start forming. Where did these ice crystals come from? They all came from the same water which was there in the bucket. They just took on a different shape and form, and now we have a different name for it. But if you zoom in very closely, at the microscopic molecular level, you still find it is nothing but just H2O existing. So if you are at the level of H2O, you won't even know if this is ice or this is water. So all distinctions have been removed away. And at that level of an atom, or even if you go deep, go further down, at the level of maybe quarks or whatever electrons, you find just electrons everywhere, or you just find protons everywhere. Or even at the level of an atom, you just find space, in fact, everywhere, because the proton is very small and the electron cloud is, almost millions of kilometers in our terms away from the proton. So all there is just space. So at that level, you just find space everywhere. And now and then you just find a particle, and even that particle occupies almost nil space. So in that sense, when an ice crystal formed within a bucket of water, and when the heat turned up, it just merely dissolved away back to its original state. So it became the bucket itself, it became the water itself. Tarati shokam tarati papmanam guha grantibhyah vimuktaha. So such a nice crystal will become mukta, it will become free of guha grantibhyah. It will become free of all those forces which were keeping it in the state of an ice crystal. Right? So to make a crystal, you need certain forces, certain molecular arrangement. A particular formation is required, a particular lattice structure is required to keep it. So those are the granthi, those are the threads which are keeping it in place. Similarly, for the individual, there are certain chains which are holding the heart in place. Here, not literally the heart, but the heart of being, the heart of identity is being kept in place by certain threads. Those will be unshackled, those will be torn away. And tarati papmanam, they will cross over. Here, cross is again poetic. You are crossing over the papma, meaning you are crossing over all sins and shoka, all grief, all sadness, and all suffering. All of it is crossed over. How? Let's assume that being in a state of crystal itself is causing the pain, because there are shards of crystal, there are very pointy structures of the crystal which are always clashing with other crystals and creating a lot of fuss between them. So that is causing a lot of wear and tear for this particular crystal. So now what happens is this crystal decides, okay, enough of this, I will now turn into my original state of water. So similarly, the human or not even human, let's just say some intellect, some intelligence, living or non-living, whatever it is, I'm not even sure at this point if it is only living beings who are achievable, I mean, living beings who can achieve this. But so some intelligence is there which has now decided to unshackle itself, and so it becomes one with its original state. Amritaha bhavati, and it becomes the Amrita, it becomes the water again, it becomes the immortalness again. Why is it Amrita? Because the uh, ice is Mrita. The ice is a temporary phase. The water is a more permanent phase. So the ice becomes water. Literally nothing actually changed. It's just the water particles which have decided to move on into different structure or regain its original structure. But for from our perspective, it looks as though those ice turned into something different. So we say it became Amrita, the intelligence became immortal. तदेतदृचाभ्युक्तं क्रियावन्तः श्रोत्रिया ब्रह्मनिष्ठा स्वयं जुह्वत एकर्षिं श्रद्धयन्तः तेषामेवैतां ब्रह्मविद्यां वदेत शिरोव्रतं विधिवद्यैस्तु चीर्णम् तदेतदृचाभ्युक्तं क्रियावन्तः श्रोत्रिया ब्रह्मनिष्ठा स्वयं जुह्वत एकर्षिं श्रद्धयन्तः तेषामेवैतां ब्रह्मविद्यां वदेत शिरोव्रतं विधिवत् यैस्तु चीर्णम्. Tadetat richa, and such a rich, meaning such a mantra has been, abhyukta has been explained here, that kriyavantaha shrotriyaha brahmanishtaha swayam juhvate ekarshim shraddhayantaha. Ekarshim shraddhayantaha. They believe in that one seer. They have faith in that one seer. These kriyavantaha shrotriyaha, those who have a great capacity to learn and listen to the true purport of all the scriptures. They have the ability to analyze all books, all knowledge systems, and come at one fundamental truth. And those who are kriyavantaha, those who have the energy and enthusiasm to do things, brahmanishtaha, those who are fixated in that state of Brahman, Swayam Juhvate, they offer themselves completely. Ekarishim Shraddhayantaha, they have absolute faith and conviction in what that one seer is. Tesham eva etam Brahma Vidyam Vadeta. Only to such people must you speak of this Brahma Vidya. Vadeta Shirovratam Vidhivat Yaihi tu Chirnam. Yaihi tu Chirnam. I am not really sure of what this Chirnam here means, but you must perform a vrata called the Shiro vrata, meaning you should take upon your head. It literally means you take the burden upon your own head. Shiro vratam vidhivat, and you should do this in a proper manner. You should not just any which way scatter and just what's the right word? Blabber on something and just scatter it into the winds. You must not throw caution to winds and take up a microphone and start blabbering all of this very sacred, pure knowledge any which time you feel like. You must be very cautious with it. You must have a feeling of reverence. You must have, that is the Shraddha. You must have a feeling of reverence. You must have a feeling of responsibility. Shirovrata. And you must talk of this to people who have this kriyavanta shrotriya brahmanishtha swayam juhvate ekarishim shraddhayantaha. You must speak of this to people who speak here, meaning not just literally speak. That though the Upanishads have, many people have by hearted and memorized this Upanishads and they have told of this. when they say vadeta, it doesn't literally mean speak as in physically speak, but you must transfer this knowledge, which is literally receiving and initiating another equally capable person or an equally capable living being. You're transferring that energy, that intuition, that very state onto another thing. So that must not be blabbered or wasted away into some unready, amateur people. That process of Brahma Vidya Pradhana, which is very sacred and happens very selectively, must happen only to deserving candidates, and even a person who's giving must also be well established in it, and they must be an expert in it too. So this is my reading of it. Let's see what the translation says here. So there is a certain fire named Ekarshi, uh, and you must perform a certain vow called the Shirovrata, and only such a person must teach this knowledge of Brahman. Teach here, they mean actually be a conduit of such knowledge. Now the Upanishads concludes by indicating the rule by which this teaching must be given. Uh, those who perform the karma enjoined, who are the Shrotriyas, who are engaged in the worship of the Brahman, seek to know the unmanifested Brahman, who with faith themselves offer the oblations to the fire called Ekarishi, to them alone, whose mind is thus purified and who are therefore fit to receive instruction, should one teach the knowledge of Brahman. So also to those who is duly practiced the vow of Shirovrata, vow among those who are the Atharvana Veda. Anyhow, this is a very, they have taken a very literal meaning. I would prefer a more figurative meaning again, that those who are the established, for example, let's say there is an ice crystal which has undergone this process of dissolving into the water, and by some chance it was able to recrystallize back. It understood the process of dissolving back into the state of water, but with that small little piece of seed, it remained and it recrystallized back. So now the ice has experienced what it means to be water and be completely free of suffering. Such a thing, such a crystal can explain to another crystal. Ultimately, the mantra has told earlier that no guru, no pravachana can help you. But you can at least point. That pointing also must be done properly, because if a person asks for the moon and you point it to the sun, they will be absolutely clueless of what. I mean, they'll actually believe the pointer and say, perhaps, yeah, that might be the moon that you're looking for. It's like you're looking at a GPS. You should be able to trust. There should be some credibility in the GPS, in the app. Otherwise, you may run into a lake thinking it is a road, right? Similarly, so the GPS has a responsibility of being truthful, of being credible. So this uh, ice crystal, because it earned its credibility by having already gone through that process, and so now can somewhat give certain pointers to the other crystal of what to do, when to expect, and so on and so forth. But mere explanation can always, is my personal belief. I perhaps disagree from the traditionalists who actually take it more literally and think you should guard it and police and keep it within, whisper it within closed ears. I perhaps disagree and think in today's time and age, anybody can Google up Mundaka Upanishad and they'll be able to read it. So what is required is, in fact, clearer understanding, even if it is conceptual, clearer understanding what we have been trying to do in the series so far. So I personally, so that misconceptions don't come in, or perhaps all of us are just here to on a voyage of trying to discover things together, at least conceptually. All of this is still, in my view, what we have been doing in the last 8, 9 sessions. It's still a conceptual exercise, I agree, but it helps people get interested and initiated into looking into such a possibility further. तदेतत् सत्यं ऋषिरङ्गिराः पुरोवाच नैतदचीर्णम् अचीर्णं व्रतोऽधीते नमः परमऋषिभ्यो नमः परमऋषिभ्यः तदेतत् सत्यं ऋषिरङ्गिराः पुरोवाच नैतदचीर्णं व्रतोऽधीते नमः परमऋषिभ्यो नमः परमऋषिभ्यः Tad etat satyam, that satya, this reality which has been spoken of, Rishihi Angiraha, this Rishi, Angiras Rishi, Pura Uvacha, spoke thus to, uh, spoke thus, Na etat achirnav vrataha, those who are not, who have not done enough vrata, who have not done enough qualification, Na etad adhite. They will definitely not be able to study this and understand the true implications. They may do this intellectually, like what I've been doing, but the true implication, the actual Shravana, where the actual intuition comes directly within into the mind and into the buddhi, will not be able to do it unless you do a Chirna Vrata. You must do a Chirna Vrata, meaning you must become so powdered by Vrata. By Vrata, here they mean, I think, by all sorts of discipline and ordered chaos. Even if it is chaos, even if it is not rigid discipline as we may think of, getting up at the exact same time, doing A, B, C, D things, that has already been demolished. Such a rigid mindset has been demolished earlier by the earlier verses. But here, vrata meaning some conviction to follow through, the desire itself, the mumukshutva itself to become liberated or to analyze things, keep looking at the truth, keep wanting to look at the truth. That itself is a vrata. And so one must get continually weathered away by the forces of such vrata. Only such polished figures will be able to truly do the dhyana of this satya. And then it finally concludes by saying, Namah Paramarishibhyo, Namah Paramarishibhya. Great prostrations to the greatest of such seers. Great prostrations to the greatest of such seers. And like I said in the last class too, there are two literal meanings. One is to actual Rishi, Angira, and other such people. The second is to all rishis who have come and who will come in the future, to all the enlightened beings. The more figurative meaning we can take is what the rishi would hear me, all the drik, all the seers, meaning all the intelligence or that one intelligence behind all this various myriad manifestation. The Vedanta goes on to say that there is actually intelligence even behind non-living beings, which is governing all the physical phenomena. So there are grades of manifestation of life forces, right? So if we fall on the spectrum on one side where we consider ourselves to be living beings and living aware things, there are still certain intelligences even hiding unknown to us behind uh, non-living things such as a chair, a desk, a laptop, etc., etc. And there is said to be a rishi behind each of this. Just as we say there is a devata everywhere, there is also the seer, the seer of the intelligence behind it. And hence this is called the Parama Rishi. And hence namaskaras to even such intelligence hiding behind all the universe, in and through the universe itself. With this, we come to an absolutely wonderful, a fabulous uh, ending where we are saying we are prostrating, and by prostration we mean we are ready to dissolve ourselves like that salt doll, ready to dissolve and appreciate and acknowledge the great effort that the other dolls have already undergone in dissolving and making the environment peaceful for us. With this, we come to the end. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. As always, we will do a quick 5-minute meditation. and wrap this series up. Thanks for all of you who have participated in this series, asked questions, participated in the discussions. Also, leave in your comments in the comments below, comment boxes below. And any more questions, any more inputs, interpretations, very different interpretations, feel free to reach out on our email or leave them as comments as well. Feel free to disagree anytime. धन्यवादः.